Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Brandon, and welcome back to another episode of Murata Media. So, as everyone knows, this whole quarantine thing is still going on, and it's kind of given me a lot of free time. So I thought it would be fun to make a video where I just talk about movies that I've watched in the quarantine and give a little review on them. And who knows, maybe my thoughts will inspire you to check some of these out, because some of them are absolutely worth watching. For some of these movies, I will be discussing my more extended thoughts, and then a few of them I'll just give a brief synopsis of what I thought. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. These are the movies that I have watched in quarantine. So going back to mid-March when this all started, the first movie I watched in quarantine was La La Land. I've seen this movie before, and it's one of my all-time favorites. Damien Chazelle is one of my favorite directors, if not my favorite director, because he's directed my favorite movie of all time. And I was hanging out with a friend one night, and we had plans to watch a movie together, and he let me pick, and he had never seen this movie before, so this is what I picked. And sure enough, he loved it too, which really made me happy. I mean, this is just a modern masterpiece. I don't want to get too deep into my thoughts on this movie because I actually want to make a full video about it sometime in the future. Who knows when that'll be, but it's something that I really want to do. But this is such a great movie, and if you have not watched it yet, please do yourself a favor and check it out. And the next movie that I watched was The Hunt. I've already made a review on this, so if you want to get my extended thoughts on The Hunt, then go check out my review of it. But to put it short, I thought it was a very entertaining but flawed satire. It's definitely not something that I really feel the need to watch again, but I can really see it as something that most people will enjoy. Then after that, I watched Logan Lucky, and I've seen this movie several times in the past, and honestly, I don't think I will ever get tired of it. After thinking about it, I really think that this might be my favorite comedy of the last 5 years, because it not only works so well as a comedy, but it's also just a great heist movie. This is another movie that I definitely want to give my full thoughts on in a video sometime in the future. It is so underappreciated, and that really upsets me. Then that same night I watched Bloodshot, and yeah, it wasn't good. It was pretty terrible, actually. This is another movie that I reviewed. I reviewed it along with The Hunt, so if you want to hear me just rip it to shreds for a few minutes, then go check that out, because I really have nothing more to say about it. A few days after that, I finally got around to watching Spike Jonze's Her, and all I can say is, why did it take me so long to watch this movie? This is without a doubt one of my favorite movies of the decade. I have never been so drawn into the world of a movie so quickly in my life. Literally within the first 5 minutes, I was so enthralled in this world and interested in how it operates. And I just love Her's presentation. The colors and production design are so bright, but the tone is very somber. And I just love the overall message of it about how we've lost intimacy with other people due to technology. But I loved this movie so much, I really want to show it to other people, and I will absolutely watch it again. And that same night, I watched the Coen brothers' Fargo. I've seen this movie before, but I hadn't seen it for a few years, and my god, does it hold up so well. The Coen brothers have such a unique style of presenting things in such a serious and dark matter, but the execution of it is so tongue-in-cheek that it's very hard to take what you're seeing seriously. And take this movie for example, a movie that contains so many gruesome murders, but at the same time you get a conversation between these people from Minnesota who have the most stereotypical Minnesota accent that you've ever heard. It really should not work at all, but it does. And that's really something that you just have to tip your cap to. And after that, I watched The Meyerowitz Stories by Noah Baumbach, and I gotta admit, I didn't love it. And that's not to say this is a bad movie, because there are a multitude of things that you can admire about it. Namely, the script. Noah Baumbach is a wizard at writing dialogue. The conversations that he puts on paper just feels like you're observing two people in the real world having a conversation. The acting by all is just stupendous, especially from Adam Sandler and Dustin Hoffman. But what didn't work for me is just that I kind of had a hard time following the story. There were a few moments where things were shown and I really didn't understand the importance of them, I guess. The editing is also so jarring. It'll literally cut when a character is right in the middle of speaking. You could tell that this was a purposeful choice, and early on I thought it was kind of funny, but then after a while it kind of just lost its mojo. And then towards the end there's these really strange fades to black that just didn't work for me. So to put it short, The Meyerowitz Stories is a very well-made film, and I completely understand why it was acclaimed as it was. It just wasn't for me. Then to cap off March, I watched Disney and Pixar's Onward, and I really enjoyed it. I reviewed this movie along with The Hunt and Bloodshot, so if you want to see my extended review of all of those movies, then go check out that video. But I really enjoyed Onward. It's not the greatest Pixar movie ever made, but it's still something that both kids and adults can enjoy. And now we're on to April, and so far this has been a really busy month. And the first movie that I watched in April was The Wayback, starring Ben Affleck. I gotta admit, I'm kind of a sucker for these sappy, feel-good sports movies, and The Wayback was no exception to that. But the thing about The Wayback is that it's not really a sports movie. I feel that it's a story about redemption that uses sports as an outlet to keep the story going. It tells the story of a man who used to be the star basketball player at his high school and has eventually become an alcoholic. And then down the road, he's asked to come back and coach the basketball team of his high school. You can really tell that this movie was very personal to Ben Affleck due to the fact that he struggled with alcoholism before. But there are just so many moments where the movie just beats you over the head, just saying, like, look how much of an alcoholic this man is. Now, I'm not an alcoholic, and I don't know anybody who is, thankfully. But the way this movie presents alcoholism just seemed so absurd a few times. Like, there's literally a scene where Ben Affleck is in the shower and he has a can of beer on his shower rack. Now, I don't know if that's actually how it works, but that just seemed a little too extreme. I could be wrong, but that's just how I saw it. But I actually thought The Wayback was great. Ben Affleck's performance was fantastic. I love the basketball scenes. They were just so well edited, and they really captured the feel of a high school basketball game. This definitely won't be for everybody, but if you like sports movies, then I think you'll like this one too. Then after that, I watched Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window, and this is another movie I question why it took me so long to finally watch it. And what better movie to watch in a quarantine than one about a wheelchair-bound man who has nothing better to do with his day than just watch his neighbors. How Alfred Hitchcock was able to make me invested in this man's neighbors' lives when you virtually know nothing about them except for when Jimmy Stewart's character is watching them. It makes no sense, but that's why he's one of the greatest directors of all time. And I have not been this on the edge of my seat watching a movie since I watched Uncut Gems a few months ago. If you have not seen this movie, then I highly recommend you check it out. If you're not into old movies, then I don't care. Watch it anyway. And after that, I watched another Coen Brothers movie, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and I gotta say, this is another one that I just really didn't care for. Just like the Meyerowitz Stories, I wouldn't say that this movie is bad, it just wasn't my cup of tea. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs is this collection of anthology films made into one feature film. There's a few of them where I was really invested. My favorites, I think, might have been Meal Ticket and All Gold Canyon, but the last one that they show before the movie ends is called The Mortal Remains, and I really did not care for that one at all. It's just these 5 people talking in a stagecoach for like 20-25 minutes, and the dialogue is very well written, but it did not do nearly enough to keep my interest. Why that one was chosen to be the last one shown before the movie finished, I don't understand that, because you would think you would want to end on a high note, but instead they chose to end on the most sour note possible. But if you like westerns, then I think you'll like this one too. It has its moments to be fun, just downright tragic at times, and then there's a few spots where it just drags a little bit for me. And after that, I watched Greta Gerwig's Ladybird, and to tell you the truth, I liked this movie a lot more than Little Women. But I really enjoyed this movie. I found it to be very relatable. The acting by all was great. The only performance that I really didn't dig was Timothée Chalamet. I'm probably gonna get a lot of hate for that, but his performance just did not jive with me. His character is like supposed to be this mysterious bad boy sort of guy, and honestly, I don't think he really fits that stereotype. This movie takes place in 2002 or 2003, and it's pretty amazing how it was able to feel like it was actually made during those years. I like this movie a lot, and it's definitely something that I could see myself watching again and appreciating even more than I did the first time. Then immediately after I finished Ladybird, I watched Trey Edward Schultz's debut film, Cretia, and after watching this, I think it's safe to say that Trey Edward Schultz is one of my favorite directors working today. His second film, It Comes at Night, I thought was very good, and his most recent, Waves, was on my top 10 of 2019. He just has such a unique style in terms of camera movements, his direction, and his editing. He's edited all his films himself, and I really admire that because you could tell that he has a vision and he won't rest until he gets what he wants. But Cretia is such a simple story of a woman coming back to see her family on Thanksgiving after an extended absence. Now picture the most awkward family get-together you've ever had, and then multiply that by 100, and you get Cretia. This movie is so awkward in a way to a point where it's almost scary. Not scary in the sense of a traditional horror film where things just jump out at you or try to unsettle you. This movie is scary more so because you would hate to be in this situation. Because when this movie was almost finished, I imagined myself as one of the characters in the room, and I gotta tell you, I would not want to be there. But this was such an impressive debut for Trey Edward Schultz, and I've loved all his movies thus far, and I cannot wait to see what he makes next. And then after that, I watched The Florida Project. It was just added to Netflix, and it was an A24 film I heard good things about, and I was like, hey, why not? And boy, oh boy, were people right on this one. This movie is the film incarnation of one of those Florida Man headlines, but this movie is also just so sweet and charming, because for most of the runtime, we're just following these kids on their adventures throughout the city. And these kids definitely do not fit the stereotype of children not being able to act. It's almost like the director just said, here, go and have fun, do whatever it is that you want to do. And you can absolutely tell they were having the time of their lives exploring and just making this movie, and it's just so sweet. I thought this was a great movie, and I've heard some mixed things about the way it ended, but this entire movie is about using your imagination, and the ending absolutely encapsulates that. Then after that, I watched another A24 movie, Yorgos Lanthimos' The Lobster, and this movie's weird, but I really enjoyed it, even though I liked the first half of it a lot more than the second half. This is another movie where the presentation is very dark, but it has this absurd element to it that it knows what it's doing and it doesn't take itself too seriously. Because I love The Lobster's concept of this dystopian future where people only have a certain amount of time to find their true love. And if they don't get there, then they're turned into an animal. I could definitely see some people thinking that it comes off as pretentious, but it really speaks true to society's pressure on people for finding a significant other when they really don't want to. And just like The Florida Project, I love this movie's ending as well because of its ambiguity, and I love reading what people think it means. And I also read a review on Letterboxd where someone said that this movie's score sounds like a much more dramatic version of the Wii theme. And after reading that, I don't know if I'll ever be able to unhear it. But this one will not be for everybody, so if you want to check it out and form your own opinion, then definitely do so, because I think it's great. And oh, here we go. I finally got around to watching Cats. And to tell you the truth, it was bad, but it was not that bad. I feel like a lot of this movie's criticism is a little bit overblown, and a lot of people say they hated it just because other people said they hated it. But as I was watching, there were a lot of things that I actually really admired about it. I thought the set design was nice, the choreography was very well done, the colors were pretty to look at in parts. Now, I know effort doesn't make a great movie, but you could tell that everybody in this movie is giving it their all. They were truly passionate about this project, but it just fell flat on its face. But I think the biggest issue I had with Cats, other than its horrendous CGI, is that it just doesn't work as a movie. This is something that works so much better as a stage play. And let me elaborate on my point using a scene in the movie. There's a scene when Taylor Swift's character comes down from the ceiling of this theater on like this prop moon, I think is what it was. Now imagine you're watching that same thing play out on a stage, and when you're watching a musical on stage, the beauty of it is that what you're seeing isn't literally how the scene is supposed to look. It leaves it up to your imagination. But when you do the exact same thing in a movie, it doesn't really leave anything to the imagination. The scene is playing out exactly how it's playing out on screen. There are just some forms of media that are better off staying as one thing. Whether it be a movie, a show, a book, a play, a poem, there are just some things that work better as one thing, and Cats absolutely works better as a stage play. But I gotta say, this movie has cult following written all over it. This is definitely a movie I could see people 10 years from now looking back on and loving it. After that, I watched another Noah Baumbach film, Frances Ha, starring Greta Gerwig, and I liked this one a lot more than the Meyerowitz stories. I think it's because I related more to Greta Gerwig's character Frances a lot more than anybody in the Meyerowitz stories. It's so quirky in its presentation, telling the story just about finding your place in the world. And I gotta say, if you're unemployed at the moment, then this probably isn't the best movie to watch. But it's not my favorite Noah Baumbach movie, even though I really enjoyed it. Marriage Story still holds the top prize, but this next movie by Noah Baumbach is a very close second. And that close second was The Squid and the Whale. This is yet another movie from him where he discusses divorce. But unlike Marriage Story, The Squid and the Whale gets the point of view from pretty much everybody who's involved. Each of them has a unique way of how the divorce has affected them and how they're coping with it. And there's a very clear contrast of the kids and their parents because both of them pick sides. And the parent that they side with is the one that they have much less in common with. But of all of Noah Baumbach's movies that I've watched in the quarantine, this one was without a doubt my favorite. And now we've come to the end. The last movie I watched before making this video was Climax. My experience of watching this movie was so interesting to me because I heard so much about it and how unique it was and how much people loved it, and I knew I had to check it out because it had a very strong start, and then by the middle it kinda went down for me, and then by the end it went way up again. And if you haven't heard of Climax, the basic premise of this movie is a bunch of dancers who are rehearsing in this abandoned school, and they start drinking this sangria that they soon realize is laced with LSD. And then I think you know what comes after that. It just becomes a full-on bad trip. But it had such a strong start where we learn about the characters, who they are, what their biggest fears are, and what they would do if they weren't able to dance. And after that, we get a very impressive choreographed dance sequence, and then we get maybe 30 minutes of the characters talking to each other, and most of them are just talking about how they're gonna have sex with somebody else who's there. And then this is followed by more dancing, and then that's when everybody starts drinking and tripping balls. But my experience was so weird because as I was watching this movie, I wasn't really enjoying it. And then after it ended, I low-key loved it. But then a few hours after I had watched it, I couldn't stop thinking about it and I really wanted to watch it again. The direction is amazing. The cinematography is just mind-blowing because there are so many long one takes. Because the movie ends with a long take. I think the take that it ends with is about 40 minutes, and it actually gets pretty freaky too, and I think the lighting has something to do with that. The lighting is, for the most part, a tint of just one color, whether it be red, green, or even blue. This is easily one of the freakiest movies I've ever seen, and after my first watch, I gave it a 7. But after a second watch, I can definitely see it going up from there. I definitely want to show this movie to as many people as I can because I really want to know their opinion on it. Well, that's it, everybody. Those are all the movies that I have watched in the quarantine thus far. If you have seen any of them, then let me know what you thought of them. Did you love them? Did you hate them? How would you rank them? If you like this video, then be sure to hit that thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe because I'll probably make another video like this sometime in the future. If you want to see my past videos, I'll link those right here. And other than that, I hope you all have a tremendous rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.